In a previous video, I made a simple hockey player class. And in this video, I want to turn that into a data class and sort of look at some of the differences. And this code, both of them can be found at this URL. So this will have both the original class with a slight modification to bring out one of the features of a data class, and then the data class version. So here was the original. We had made a hockey player class. We defined a constructor and some methods, and then we used the constructor. We made an instance of a hockey player and sort of printed some things out, and then used uh, one of the things was to create a URL, and then we made a web browser, and that brought up a page on this hockey player. And here's a little bit I've added to what I did before. I made hockey player, which is Nicholas, and then I made hockey player 2 and hockey player 3, and I asked if hockey player 1 and 2 were the same, and then I made a third one, and I had a property I added in player num, and in the first example, I made them exactly the same, all the data the same, number 62. And then this player happened to, since I first got the data, change teams and got a new number. And so it's 96. So I made three players who are all pretty much the same guy. And here, but I didn't write any code to say how to compare people, how to compare my objects. And so when I run this, there brings up the browser on this guy, and it's saying down here, players 1 and 2 are not the same guy. All their information is the same, and players 2 and 3 are not the same guy. That they're the same guy except the different number because he changed teams. Okay, so now let's go over to the data class version and see that we can do get some things for free and do a little bit better with this. So this is it's called a shallow comparison. So the default comparison is just sort of is the data stored at the same memory location? Are we just sort of pointing to the same place? We were not, so it's considered to be not the same unless we work harder. Now moving over to the data class. And so the whole purpose of a class, as we said in that video, was encapsulation, to bring together some data and some functionality. And if the main purpose is more about data than functionality, then you might have a data class. And so they've just designed something that is a data class that brings together and gives you sort of the default functionality of it that you want in a data class sort of automatically. Again, so here's the URL for it. And then I got a lot from this video by Neural9, so check that out. So this is not comes down as standard, but you have to bring in the module. So bring in from the data classes module, bring in data class, and then the thing called field as well. So here's it. Before we start our class, we use this at sign and decorate and say that this is going to be not just a class, but a data class. And then we are saying what fields we're going to have. I'm going to have, in this simple example, an ID, a first name, a last name, and a player num. And we're going to sort of not rely completely on the sort of dynamic typing, but we're going to sort of, kind of tell it that we think these things are going to be strings. So we give it a little hint. And if you recall back here, there was no player number in the constructor. And so I wanted to keep that consistent. And so that's where this field thing comes in. So I'm bringing in data class and the field So here's the at data class, making this whole thing, turning the class into a data class. And then here's where the field comes in. Then I'm going to have this thing called a player num. It's a number, but it's a string because I don't add or do any math with these numbers. Um, and I'm going to say init false, and that is going, so it's going, I'm not going to create a constructor. I'm going to let it make that constructor for me, but this is me telling it, this is not going to be in the constructor. Uh, I'm not putting this in the constructor. I will add it later. And then also I'm going to ask, are these the same player? And I don't want the player number to be in there. So when I say, are these the same guy? The player number doesn't matter. He changed teams. They gave him a new number, but it's the same guy. And so I'm saying, don't put it in my constructor and don't use it when I'm comparing two hockey players. If I'm asking if two hockey players are the same guy, they can change numbers and still be the same guy. Okay. So no, so I have the fields. I say if the field is in the constructor or not, if I'm going to use it in comparison. There are many other options. Um, See this video for more. Um, Declare the same or sort of make the same functions, methods, a full name, and a URL. Instantiate a player, three fields, the ID, the first name, the last name, add in the player number. And now here's one of the, again, what the first change was, I didn't need the constructor. It gave me, it's going to give me a constructor for free. Here's a second change. When in the original hockey player class, which is what we've run so far, and I did a bunch of prints. And one thing I did was just print player one. And that was this not very useful like memory location that it told me. The one thing that the data class is going to do for me is it's going to write an underscore underscore a dunder representation rep, and it's going to make something better. It's going to give me something better than just a memory location. And that's another thing that comes for free. So the constructor sort of came for free. This comes for free. I can still make a dictionary out of it. I can still get individual properties like last name and player name. I can use my methods like full name. So that's all the same. I can still use the web browser thing. And now here's going to be another change, another thing that comes from the data class pretty nicely. I made another object using the same data, and I made a third object, player three, with the same data except a different number. Change teams, change number, but same guy. And then I asked down here if player one is player two, say they're the same guy. If player two is equal to player three, say they're the same guy. Now down here, what we've run so far is the class. It was doing the shallow comparison, saying they're not the same guy. And now let's look at our data class and brings up the browser thing. So here was the print. So it gave the class name that it's a hockey player, and it gave all the properties. So I can say, do I want, now when I was doing the field up here, this field thing, where do I have it? I said, I don't want this in the constructor. I don't want it to be used for comparison. I could also say I don't want it in the representation. I left it in the representation. And so there it is. And then here is the dictionary, and here's the, I guess that's the last name. Here's the full name. Here's the number. There's the URL. And now I'm getting that they are the same guy. So I didn't write explicitly a comparison. I just, it developed one for me as a data class. That's part of what a data class will do for me. Um, and I can have this ability to control, as I did, um, to say what does and doesn't participate in the comparison. So the player number did not participate in the comparison, so it was uh, so when the guy changed teams and changed numbers, he's still the same guy. And that's what we want. So this is just a quick example of some of the things that you get for making your classes into data classes. That's all. Thanks for your attention.